Okay, for this lesson, I've asked that you collect an item from around the home. It could be a cereal box, it could be washing powder box. For the purposes of this demonstration, I'm going to use this cracker small box. I've picked this primarily so it can fit within my workspace and we can see it okay. But you can go something a little bit bigger, cereal box, Ritz crackers, something like that. I do ask that we pick something that is mainly rectangular, okay, or square. Try to avoid items that have got circular edges. If they've got a circular edge, it can get a bit complicated when we're drawing in isometric, and I just want us all to do something rectangular to begin with. We can build up to that. Something like this with a rounded edge becomes a bit tricky in isometric, so that's for another time. Okay, so I'm going to move that out of the way. In lessons in the past, as I've said before, I've given students one of these. I've got about 20 of these, so I can hand these out around the class. And again, it's very rectangular. There's no real tiny little curved edges, but effectively a rectangular shape. And I put this out in front of the class and they draw the shape, but then I get them to customize it, okay? One thing I want us to really think about is if you look at the text straight on, or in other words, drawing it in orthographic, it looks very different than if we turn the box like so. You see how the writing looks a lot different, okay? Look, it's angled accordingly. So this writing here, okay, these lines still work in the same rules, so they should be parallel to these lines, okay? You look at this L, I've drawn actually here, this is where I've tried to explain this, where in the past students have drawn the lines like that, but then they don't line up. Look at this L here, this L, that straight line, lines up with this line here, lines up with this, lines up along with this, okay? That line on the B there, parallel with this one here. So that's the one thing we need to remember, okay? Again, just going to put this on the page, just quickly. Remember, start with your tick, any rectangular item, move on to a crow's foot, move on to a garden fork, making sure this element, this element, this element are all the same height. And finally, finish off drawing your crate. Okay? Again, these are parallel, they're train tracks. These three are all parallel. These are parallel. This one, this one, this one is parallel. Okay, so, as I say, I've started with the I'm choosing the this crackers box. I'll put this here. Now, where I said last time you don't need your gridded paper, this time you probably do need your gridded paper. So I'm going to use it. And just to recap, if we put a drawing underneath, we should be able to see the lines. I don't know how well that picks it up on my camera, but you should be able to see that the lines are underneath. So you use that as a general guide. You line up your line. And sometimes people find it useful to get a bit of masking tape and tape these so that the paper doesn't move and you know your lines are always lining up. It's no good drawing here and then someone moves that paper down here and then you carry on, because obviously everything won't line up as it should. So if it helps you, you can get a little bit of masking tape temporarily to keep it in place. Up to you. So, as you can see, I've cheated a little bit. I've drawn some of mine out for, to save a bit of time. So, again, if I'm drawing this box, I'll do it from this way round. I'm going to include this surface, I'm going to include this surface, and this top section. So, I've started already, but effectively I did a tick. Now, in this instance, I did a backwards tick because this element is shorter. I then did my crow's foot. Now in this instance, it is way too long. Okay, I've drawn it much longer than I need to, but that's fine because I can rub this element out. I'm actually going to keep those lines on, but you can imagine you'd rub these lines out. This one, and then finally you line these up. So I would make sure that I can see my lines underneath. Yeah, that looks good. And then we can draw like so. But I'm going to actually use a ruler this time. So draw our lines up. Again, don't push too hard on the page, because if you make a mistake, you can rub it out. Draw like so. Now we know this line should be parallel. A good tip is if you're drawing a box like this, think about your page. Have you got enough space up here? If you start your design here, you start it midway up the page, you'll start drawing, you'll get to the top and you'll think, oh no, I've run out of space up here. So you need to bear that in mind. So if you're drawing a box like this, maybe give yourself a finger's gap or a centimetre for your bottom point, the bottom of your tick needs to be about a centimetre gap. So bear that in mind, okay? This line here, obviously it needs to be parallel. So if you've lined this up with your paper, you should be able to see it. Yeah, I can see it here. Put my ruler on top. I'm going to draw that way too long. Look at this line here. So we know this one should line up. Yeah, I can see that. And then, of course, rub out what you no longer need. Okay. Then you've got to start working with your elements in your box. So my box has a barcode, my box has typeface, different types of fonts, different types of designs. So you need to remember, you're not looking at it straight on, you're looking at it like that. So your barcode, what does it look like? Like this. Try and line it up. Okay. And these lines aren't going off in that direction. They are parallel with this surface here. So I would draw lines like so. And I would make sure the ruler, I'll take my ruler and make sure these lines are like this. Quite a lot of students will start drawing lines like this. That doesn't work, does it? That would be like having this barcode and the barcode is, this barcode is going off like this. We don't want that. We want these vertical matching this. Okay? So, just to save a bit of time, I've drawn the barcode in and I've put some of my text in. Now again, I find it useful, and I suggest you do the same. I find it useful that I draw 2 lines and then you write within the guide that you've drawn. Okay, so 128 grams. Again, it looks like that, doesn't it? So I've tried to match that up. If you're unsure, literally take your box, tilt it, take your cereal box or whatever it is you're using, tilt it and look at it from this angle, okay? If you try and write it like that, it will be like an optical illusion. It'll end up breaking your brain, okay? So we'll try to avoid that. So I'm gonna go on to the next step, where I've actually drawn in some other element. So I don't know if you can see this, but there's a rectangle around this section of graphics and text. So I've drawn that in. So again, that line is parallel with that line and it's parallel. This one, this one, this one, all parallel. So that obviously works. Looking this way, they're still parallel. So therefore this one, this one, this one. And what you need to think about is your text there, where it says fins. I've drawn 2 lines in and I'm actually going to draw this part out. Okay, so I know I need to put the word fins in that gap. If I start writing without any sort of thought process, I might get to T-H-I and then I realise I'm not going to fit this word in. So you plan it out. So I'm always looking at my box. So I will put a T there. Remember these lines here, this line is parallel with this line. Quite often I'll have students and they'll draw and they'll put a line like this. And they'll put T-H. That doesn't work. It works like that, doesn't work like that. So tilt your box. Let's do it again. Like that. I'm keeping within my guidelines that I've drawn for myself. So I'm going to put in an I, put in an N. Now I'm going to do this line here, beforehand so that I know I've left enough space for the S. An S is, I find the S is the hardest letter to do. So what I think is, well, where's the halfway point? There. So I think, okay, well, as long as I've got that lined up, that should work. So that line there should be in the middle. Get quite a lot of people who do S's where they do like an S like that because they run out of space. So think about where the middle is. Okay, so that's how I would write my text. Now, I'm not going to write all this out, but you can see cheddar and cracked black pepper goes here. That's quite a lot of text. So if we just write cheddar, we might think, oh, actually, I'm not going to fit that in. So I would probably just put a line in the middle there and you know, okay, well, that word needs to fit in this space. This word needs to fit in that space. So I will write this out quickly. Now, that just about fit in. It is tricky. You will find the text probably the trickiest part. I would have to put a ampersand there. And then I'm not going to do the whole thing because I've already done it. In fact, I'll show you what I've done. I've got this here. So I've written all of that out. I've tilted it this way. I've added that. I've added the elements. Okay, and I've started on these elements on the side there. And again, straight line, but when you tilt it, it looks at an angle. So I would draw a line in first, and then I would draw this, you know, curved line on top of it. There's nothing wrong with making lots and lots of guidelines to help you out. Okay, that bowl looks a lot different at an angle, doesn't it? So try and replicate as close as possible the graphics you see in front of you. These two other products that they're advertising at an angle, there'll be some text there and another barcode. Those lines, remember, those lines are going this way. They're not going horizontal, they are diagonal. They are the 30-degree angle, like this angle here. Okay, so finally, once we've drawn it out, and that should take you a fair amount of time, depending on how much graphical information is included on your product, I would then like you to apply colour. So I've started applying colour. Try and use colouring pencils. I don't really like felt tip pens when we do isometric drawings, only because they tend to bleed through the page and they end up looking a little bit messy unless we really take our time with them. But for the purposes of this, I find colouring pencils work really well. Okay, so when we are rendering, we need to make sure we are applying even colour throughout. What I don't like to see is when some students colour in and they have this area here and then they have white patches, they have darker sections, lighter sections. I think that should be more or less a uniform colour throughout. So we need to make sure that we are replicating that. Okay, so like so. I won't colour this whole thing in because you get the idea. Okay. And I've left those lines on. I would expect you to rub those out. And again, just a reminder, I've drawn that in. Should be 30 degrees. If you're ever unsure, you've got your guide paper. If you're ever unsure and you have a protractor, draw a line at the bottom there, line that is parallel with the bottom of your page, and then just measure that. If it's something is looking wrong to you, measure that. If it's not 30 degrees, that's what your problem is. Okay? I'm going to just draw in this barcode again. So again, look at that line. You can use your guide paper or you can go up with your ruler. And your barcode should look something like that. Okay? Okay. Questions that students have asked me in the past. Do they need to write out every item of text? If the writing is literally as small as this, like your ingredients, I don't know how well that's picking up on camera, it might be that you just want to write in, you know, like this. You can have lines where the text is. But I would say only do that if the text is this small. So for instance, where it says serving suggestion there, I've attempted, and maybe I've written it actually a little bit too big, I've attempted to write it in. Where possible, include all of that information. So I've got this, you know, this, I guess it's like a slogan. I've added that slogan in there. I've added that why not try, I've added that in there. Where possible, try and add it in. But if it gets really small, so it's like this, of course, you may find you're not going to be able to fit that in. Okay? So, I'm going to stop the video now. Hopefully that's pretty straightforward. I'm really interested to see what you guys can come up with. As I say, I'm just going to say it again, avoid anything with curves, because that will make things overly complicated at this stage. And remember at all times, if your text or anything isn't lining up, think to yourself, why is that text, if it looks wrong, why does it look wrong? Probably because you're thinking about your item straight on rather than tilted. That Fins text looks a lot different from here to here. Okay? So have that in mind. If you're unsure, hold your box up, look at it, and then try and replicate it. Okay. Right. Best of luck, and I will talk to you again next week.